Hey, hope you're doing all right. I just wanted to take a minute to explain what we're trying to do with the rubric and example. You can see our rubric, number one, has a different scale. Okay, so we're not using letter grades or numbers. We're using a description of the writing. So what our goal is to have sophisticated writing, and a sophisticated will correspond to what is normally an A. Okay, but when you look in Schoology, you'll see these words as a way for us to better converse about what's going on in your writing. Okay. In other words, I'm not going to distinguish whether your writing is an 83 or an 84. I don't think that's very helpful, but I will distinguish that it's solid versus sophisticated. Okay. Schoology will convert those to numbers. So, like, I think sophisticated, it converts to 95%. Okay. Not 100%, it's 95%. Doesn't mean I think your paper is not good if it's a 95. Okay. That's not the point. I think it's great. Okay. Same here. It'll come at 85, 75, and so on. So these words correspond to those letter grades, which get translated to numbers. The way I would think about it, though, is if all of the writing pieces I turn in are sophisticated, then the grade is going to be sophisticated. If I'm bouncing back and forth, and some of my writings are solid and some are sophisticated, that's where you and I can look at it together and see, like, you know, has the writing improved? And if the more recent writing is sophisticated, that's a better picture where your writing grade should end up, right? If it's always back and forth, right, then maybe we're not quite there yet, and there's still a couple things we could fix and revise. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. And if it's not, I'm glad to answer questions. On this specific task, we're writing an argument, okay? And so the descriptions to the right of the grade try to articulate what a sophisticated argument should look like. So as you look at this one, I notice, it should have an excellent, unique approach to the thesis. And that's different than a solid, which has an intelligent or effective thesis, right? So both are going to have a strong thesis statement. It's just the sophisticated one is maybe a little more unique in its approach, or maybe it does something that's a little bit better, perhaps. And we'll look at some examples of that to help. Same with support. Here it's varied and creative, and here it's effective. Again, there's nothing wrong with effective support. It's just that that sophisticated essay is taking an extra step. It's doing more, right? I like to think of like Olympic divers, right? Like I can dive off the diving board and make, somewhat of a splash or whatever, but you're not going to mistake me for an Olympic diver when I go into the water. Um, they're attempting to do things that are more complicated and require greater expertise than my cannonball, for example, right? And that's what the rubric's trying to articulate. Sometimes people do things that are more precise or more accurate or more complicated in their writing, and that's what they're trying to give voice to here. Here they note, organization is excellent, okay, versus just solid, right? So, like, I know there's some gray area in those adjectives, and that's what we try to do in our editing slides is give you some tips about, like, here's how you could move your style from being solid maybe to being sophisticated, okay? But that's the language that we'll start to use. And I just gave you some examples here of some thesis statements that you could look at as just a way to say, like, all right, this one's probably, whatever, solid. This one's probably sophisticated, right? So as I look at them, I'll just kind of walk through them with you. This first one I think is pretty good, right? It's a solid to sophisticated thesis statement. Depends on what they do in the rest of the paper, but they're in good shape there. The second one is really excellent. Okay, it's sophisticated. They're attempting to do something that's more complicated than that first one, right? First one could still be sophisticated, but if I compare the two, number two is probably um, more complicated in its approach and gets to a better depth. The third one here, okay, I would call this one safe. Okay, it's kind of blunt, right? See this language? I agree with. Okay, that's a teeny bit on the blunt side, and it's just kind of restating the prompt, really. Okay, there's nothing added to it. Versus number one, right, where it extends, it not just limits, but it broadens and enhances. It gives me a direction that's going. This third one doesn't really do that. Same with the fourth one, right? According to Sontag, and rightfully so. In other words, there's not much added here. Number one and number two add something. Number three and number four do not, right? So number one and two are more sophisticated. Number 3, again, I would say is safe. Number 2, it's a little better than number 3, right? It could be solid, but it could be safe as well. This example is just so you can see a completed product. This one was a timed one. Yours is not timed. So, I'm just showing you what they did, and it's good. So it's a good example. This one would score sophisticated. Okay? They're doing the things that we want them to do. And it gives you some comments. College Board graded this one because it's an AP prompt. And so you can see what they thought about it. So these 2 tools are just meant to help you, number 1, understand our grading. But number 2 is a way to kind of check your own work, right? We have the editing slides that give you some tips, but I can easily run through this rubric with my own and see, all right, where's my support? Okay, my support is solid. That could drag down my whole paper, really, right? If my prose style is just okay, that's probably going to keep it from being sophisticated in the long run. Okay, so it's a way to check yours. And then you can also check it against the example if that helps you, but you don't have to do that either. Okay? But if you have questions as you're writing or as you're editing or looking at the editing slides, feel free to shoot me a note. I'm always glad to help you out. We do miss having you guys in class, and hope that everything works out, that you can get back with us again soon.